Thank you all for attending this evening. We are convening the meeting on state, federal, and regional government. I'm Angeline Kunellis. I'm the East End Town Councilor, and I chair this committee. With us this evening is Councilor Anthony Palumba, Councilor at Large, and he is the Vice Chair of the committee, and Councilor Lisa Feltner, District B Councilor, and she is the Secretary of the committee. Welcome, and thank you all for taking time during this holiday season to convene this meeting. The Town Council Committee on State Regional Government of the city known as the Town of Watertown will hold a public meeting on should be Tuesday, December 22nd, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. in accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general laws, chapter 30A, section 20, relating to the 2020 COVID-19 emergency and to avoid group congregation. This meeting has only remote opportunities for participation with public access provided as follows. The meeting will be televised through Watertown Cable Access TV. The public may join the virtual meeting online. The public may join the virtual meeting audio only by telephone. The number is 877-853-5257 or 888-475-4499 and enter webinar ID 927-7885-9291. Public may also comment through email to lfeltner.watertownma.gov. And the agenda and all of the information that I have noted are available on the town's website, and you just need to click on the appropriate location for joining the meeting, and you will automatically be brought before us. I'm calling the meeting to order, and this evening we are going to be discussing Section 18, repositioning of the E. Joyce Munger Building Federal Public Housing. And this item was brought to the Town Council at the November 10th, 2020 meeting and referred to committee. As background information, on October 27th, 2020, Council President Sideris received this following letter regarding repositioning of federal public housing units. On behalf of the Watertown Housing Partnership, I am writing you about a proposal by the Watertown Housing Authority to, quote, reposition, unquote, the authority's 50 federal public housing units. At its October 20th, 2020 meeting, the partnership was briefed on this proposal by Michael Lara, the authority's executive director. Under the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's Section 18 program, local housing authorities with 50 or fewer public housing units can reposition those units into the Section 8 voucher program. Such a conversion allows the building owner to significantly increase the federal money supporting the units. The partnership voted on October 20th to endorse the authority's proposal. We believe that repositioning the units will benefit the tenants and the town by providing more resources to meet the long-term operating and capital needs of these units, while there does not appear to be any downside to the repositioning. And this is signed by Fred Reynolds, Chair of the Watertown Housing Partnership. So with us this evening is Mr. Michael Lara, Executive Director of the Watertown Housing Authority, who will share with us information that we can subsequently review. So Mr. Lara, I turn it over to you, and you may also introduce the folks you've also brought along with you this evening. And also, I'd be remiss if not introducing Mr. Larry Field, who is a senior planner in Watertown with the Community Development and Planning and he's here with us this evening to assist in any matters that we may deem appropriate. So, Mr. Lara, I turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Canellis, that great introduction. I'll just briefly introduce the staff of the Watertown Housing Authority that's here today. Emily Horgan is our lease housing manager. She operates the Section 8 program, which is obviously what we'll be talking about today. And then I believe by phone, who's muted currently, Patty Richardson is our elderly resident service manager, who's been with Watertown Housing Authority for quite some time and operates the 100 Warren Street property, works very closely with our residents, and was a big part of the resident consultation. And then we have James Mello, who is our tenant, who is representing 100 Warren Street's 50 federal public housing units today, to describe, I think, his experience with the resident consultation and their understanding of this conversion. And lastly, Margaret Donnelly Moran, who is under the intergovernmental agreement with Cambridge Housing Authority and Watertown Housing Authority. We're getting some guidance from the best of the best. Cambridge has been doing this for quite some time and truly has a thorough understanding of the Section 18 process, probably more so than any other housing authority in the state. So that is everybody that is joining me today. And with that, I just wanted to open up with what we're doing in repositioning. With the councilor's permission, I'll just jump right in and kind of briefly describe the conversion. And so what we're looking to do is convert the 50 federal public housing units to 50 project-based Section 8 vouchers. And the way we're going to go about going through this application is the Section 18 program. Section 18 is very unique. It's actually made for disposition and demolition of federal public housing, but there is a subsection of this program that is for 50 or under. And so let me just briefly say Section 18 is, again, it's for bigger properties, properties that are obsolescent, properties that never receive the proper capital financing. And by capital, I mean really maintaining the components and commercial appliances of that building, siding, boilers, roof, etc. And so the federal government has never, and still continues to this day, even after yesterday's relief bill, funding capital at public housing. And so we are moving our funding stream from public housing to Section 8. But again, the Section 18 program is really for buildings that have sort of fallen apart, need to be demolished and rebuilt. There's a 50 or under program that is made for housing authorities that are very small. And we happen to qualify because we are exactly 50 public housing units. The purpose of this, I think, Margaret could add to it, but I think anybody that is in affordable housing right now that involves HUD knows that HUD wants out of owning public housing. The federal government does not want to own property, especially not affordable housing property. They have to inspect it. It's lacking the capital financing, and they simply do not want to pick up the tab. I think it's currently allocated as of yesterday to receive something in the network of 3.5 billion, but the capital backlog is over 30 billion across the United States. So they are funding Section 8, and Section 8 is being funded at the fair market rate. So if we fall under the 50 or under, and we are able to convert under the Section 18 sort of subsection of Section 18, then we would be able to get 50 tenant protected vouchers, which would convert, or we would project base them at this development, 100 Warren Street. And so I think there's three reasons this really stands out as such a dynamite program for the Watertown Housing Authority, and something we've been researching now for 2.5 years. Number one, there is no debt on the land. So there's no debt to pay off. That's a huge thing. It's this vacant property in a way once it's converted. And then I think the other thing is the payment standard. The payment standard for Section 8 in this area is extremely competitive. Currently, Watertown Housing Authority offers over $2,000 for a one bedroom to go out with their Section 8 mobile voucher, over $2,500 for a two bedroom, and at the current payment standard, over $3,000 for a three bedroom. So we've moved into the competitive, fair market rate with the Section 8 program we have at Watertown. And so by converting what we have now to Section 8, it's sort of a no-brainer in the sense that the amount of money we're going to be getting to provide the same excellent level of housing in Watertown. Example, and I think in the brochures that were given to the subcommittee, you could see that.
Excuse me, would it be helpful to put the documents online?
On the shared screen here?
Yes.
I don't know, is that possible, Larry, for us to do that?
Yes.
If you can assist me with that, that'd be great. And just to put up the brochure, I know there's the 2-page brochure, and then there's also the 1-page fact sheet.
Yes, okay, great. So if we can just go down to the document that Michael is talking about. Is that the document?
It is. It's gonna be a little hard to see. It's in an angle there. There you go. We can go clockwise and perfect.
Great, perfect.
And right there on the left, if you
Larry.
can see it clear as day, 1 bedroom 2090, 2 bedroom 2542, and currently we're receiving in subsidy, not including the shelter rents and not including what we get in capital per year, which is roughly $100,000 for the 50 units. We are looking to go from about $400 per month per unit to over $2,000. We have 45 1 bedrooms at the 50 federal public housing units in Munger and 5 2 bedrooms. So the increase that we're seeing is beyond significant. We'll be able to do capital improvements that we never were able to fathom under the public housing model. I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is an elevator. Shocking that they built this in the early 80s with 1 elevator for 50 units across 4 floors of federal public housing. Truly, you need 2 elevators. And so we could never afford that under the current capital public housing model. The goal is to convert to a way where we can properly finance this building for a very long time. And I think this is the key way of doing it. These 50 units will be around, those 50 at Munger, for much longer than our state public housing portfolio currently, based on the fact that they're going to be funded at essentially double of what we're currently getting. If you add capital, if you add the shelter rents at $800 per month per unit, with all those added expenditures, all the hidden costs, if you would, you're still looking to double your bankroll at every single unit at the Munger building. So I think it's, again, something we've looked closely at. There are RAD is another option that's out there. There's voluntary conversion. There's different programs, but this particular subsect of Section 18 offers us sort of the sweetheart deal, truly, because there is not the one-for-one conversion that's usually offered, where you can get a public housing unit and just say, I'd like a Section 8 voucher. If that was the case, the entire United States would just convert to vouchers. So we qualify for a very unique program. And the coolest thing about it, and what I'll end on, is the building is in pristine condition. Brian Costello, the former executive director, and Tom Wade, the former executive director before him, going back to 1986, 1989, they always had to maintain Warren Street and struggled to do so. They weren't properly funded. In 2007, Watertown Housing was one of 15 housing authorities that was selected for the ARA grant through the Obama administration, which redeveloped that building, that entire building. Warren Street looked completely different, if you remember, a very long time ago. And after 2007, 2008, the massive redevelopment that happened there, it's a flagship building. It's one of the nicest senior public housing buildings in not just Massachusetts, but the United States. And so the fact that this program is created to convert you to vouchers to help you pay to repair your building is all the more ironic, because we're in such good shape there that we're able to spend down all the money we have now built up in the reserve, only to convert to Section 8 and receive much more funding. So this building is going to be in absolutely fantastic shape here in the next few years as we properly fund it. And we're doing the flooring right now. We're building an emergency generator, and our timeline is that hopefully before the end of next year, we will be essentially converted from public housing units to Section 8 vouchers.
And may I ask, is this process already in the works?
This is part of the process, absolutely. We are consulting residents and the town to get the approval, and we're working on the application. We've done the environmental review that needs to be done. We are preparing the ownership structure, because I cannot actually just convert this property and give this new entity from Watertown Housing Authority to Watertown Housing Authority. That offends contract law, if you would. So we are forming a nonprofit that is wholly controlled by the housing authority to be the other part of this transaction. And that's who's gonna own Munger Building, but it's essentially the Watertown Housing Authority. We can select and control the board members who go on there. And again, this is gonna maintain the control of this building for the long term.
Thank you. I'd like to acknowledge that Councillor Anthony Donato is with us this evening, as is Councillor Caroline Bays. So, Mr. Lara, is there anything else you'd like to add right now before I open it up to questions?
I think just the one last thing would be, what is going to change to the residents? That was our focus of the resident consultation. What is going to impact our residents here in Watertown? And the answer is absolutely nothing. Their paperwork will look a little bit different because they're filling out Section 8 paperwork instead of public housing. But I think what's most important is the rent calculation and what they can deduct from their rent now. That is not going to change. That was the most important part of resident consultation. I think one of the surprising feedbacks we got from resident where people were nervous they were going to have to move and leave because they weren't going to be eligible now. None of that changes. I can't emphasize that enough. It's federal public housing going to federal Section 8. And so federal from federal, nothing is going to change as far as deduction and how we calculate their rent. So I just want to emphasize that. All we're going to be able to do now is provide a higher level of service. One of the first things we're going to be doing is building a capital for the elevator and even hiring a full-time supportive service social worker that can be available in that building that has an office, because currently we're not able to support that with our current funding. So I would just end on the fact that, again, residents will not see a change whatsoever after the conversion. That's a focus of ours. They could see a change in the fact that we could say you have to cover utilities, but we don't want that. This board and Watertown Housing Authority wants no impact on these residents. And so the Housing Authority through the nonprofit will cover the utility expenses at this 50 units. So I want to emphasize again, nothing changing for our residents.
Thank you. I'd like to open it up to the committee members, Councilor Feltner, Councilor Palumba, for any questions. Yes, Councilor Feltner.
Thank you. The only question I had was when I looked at the, I believe it was in the brochure, it said, what are the long-term implications of repositioning? I didn't quite understand the answer when it was talking about new development and construction of new units. Are you saying that because you were just mentioning that, you know, we're getting that much more revenue, if you will, payment structure that you could build up over time, and like you're saying for the capital improvement of the elevator, or you're looking at maybe there would be more units in the future because of that? Is that?
I appreciate the question, Councilor Feltner, and you're right that I'm not talking about that building, although we could build new units on where Munger is now. If we can find the parking for it, we could add a few units there on that property. But what we're meaning is there will be enough money to make sure that the 50 units, that's the focus of this nonprofit, that those 50 units have enough operating and capital money to ensure their affordability long-term. But because there's such a significant amount of cash flow coming in, the nonprofit will have the flexibility to support some funding of new construction. And right now we're looking at Nichols Ave Community Garden. We have design work right now. I'm in contact with the state to see what we can do about that property to develop new housing. We hope to have a 3D rendering and full schematic design for the CPA when they begin to accept projects. And so you would think with partnering with CPA funds, the nonprofit fund that we're going to have as well, and perhaps even the state. Now you have money to build units because it's very, very expensive to do so. But we are realistically looking at the possibility of this funding stream helping us develop new construction elsewhere in Watertown, where we own vacant land. This isn't, you know, we don't have to purchase the land to build. So that is why often you do see CPCs and CPAs partners with housing authorities. So that would be part of the goal of this repositioning, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful.
Councilor Feltner, any follow-up? Okay. Councilor Palumba?
Thank you. Thank you, Michael, for the presentation. Wonderful, and for the resources that you shared. I want to focus a little bit in on the nonprofit entity. Isn't it true that the Watertown Housing Partnership, Watertown Housing Authority already administers Section 8, right? So what I don't understand is if we're converting to Section 8, why can't it just be that the Housing Authority now has 50 more units of Section 8 to manage, as opposed to creating another entity?
The short answer, bureaucratic red tape. I would say that it's the regulations. You can't dispose of this property and then hand it to yourself. It would offend the laws and regulations. But I think what's so important to focus on is HUD encourages us to do it this way. This is not something where HUD's saying, oh, that's clever. It's actually quite the opposite. 46 states in the United States don't have state public housing. Most of them have only federal. Massachusetts, of the 4 states that do have public housing, is bar none the largest. We have the largest state public housing portfolio in the United States. But HUD in this area, Boston HUD Field Office, has been working very closely with us for about a year now to look at this, and they completely think this is a great fit for Watertown. And they think the formation of the nonprofit is the way to go. You maintain control is what they want to see. Because if you think about it, these processes in other states, they're handing it to a nonprofit not controlled by the housing authority. So there's no necessary guarantee that they'll want to keep it affordable. That's quite the opposite here at the housing authority. We're going to make sure that when we enter into an agreement with the nonprofit, the housing authority and the nonprofit, that the use is going to be specific and say, all 50 have to be affordable. None of these can be fair market. None of them can be above certain thresholds. This is going to be 50 affordable units forever. And so to your point, the nonprofit has to be done because of the HUD regulations. I don't have an option.
May I continue?
Yes, please.
So then the concept here of having a nonprofit means that, and you have this income that comes into the nonprofit, some of which the nonprofit will use to maintain the building, put in a new elevator, that sort of thing. And then the rest of the funds that come into the nonprofit could be used for additional housing. Are you looking at the nonprofit like you would a CDC?
I would say to the degree that we may not staff it, the nonprofit may assist the housing authority in being able to take on development, planning, CDC type responsibilities. For now, the purpose of this nonprofit, again, is to help the housing authority with the funding of that. So you are absolutely right. If there is cash outside of the capital and operating of those 50 units, we would hope to use it for development. We don't know at this point how much that could be. But I think within a few years, we're talking in the neighborhoods of hundreds of thousands of dollars that the Watertown Housing Authority would have to be able to assist in constructing new development. And again, there's tax credit deals. There's so many different things that are happening right now that are evolving. But yes, there would be some flexibility for us to do what a CDC does. And when you think about it, Watertown doesn't have one dedicated to Watertown only. Only the Watertown Housing Authority does that now.
So in a sense, though, because it is sort of acting as a CDC, but as a nonprofit, it will have the opportunity to access state and federal funds for construction of new units?
There's a possibility we would do it through the nonprofit. There's a possibility you could do it through the housing authority. But certainly the way we're structuring this nonprofit, without, I think, getting too lost in legalese, is that there's different structures you can do for a nonprofit. This one will not be one that is solely supporting the housing authority. It will have some flexibility so that it can earn funds, apply for grant funding and other avenues. And, that could be operating of the new construction. Who's going to go in there and do the help? We have a brand new state-of-the-art learning center that's going to be built and finished by hopefully the end of next year. Who's going to come in and do the programming there? Perhaps a nonprofit to help us with the funding and grant. So there's a lot of possibilities. I don't want to sort of limit it, but yes, without a staff actually dedicated to the nonprofit, it will function as such. But again, it's going to do it through a management agreement with the housing authority. It's going to fund the housing authority to achieve the goals of the nonprofit, which is to further affordable housing in Watertown. We just want more affordable housing options in this area.
No, I think it's wonderful. I'm just trying to get my head around the relationship between the two, so that the Watertown Housing Authority will still maintain not ownership of these 50 units, but will have a management agreement with the owner being the new nonprofit, and that the Housing Authority will manage the units via an agreement with the nonprofit. Is that correct?
Exactly. The Housing Authority is managing the nonprofit's unit. Nonprofit owns it, and we'll be entering into a land lease management agreement. We're not certain as to the structure, but certainly we've all agreed that shouldn't be overly complex, because you're just entering into a contract between the nonprofit and the Housing Authority. But the great part is, as you said, Counselor, is at the end of the day, we own it. The nonprofit board at this point is going to be a mirror board, one for one, of the Watertown Housing Authority. And there's nothing inappropriate about it, because I think instinct is to say, is that what you should be doing? And it's actually, again, HUD is saying that's what they want to see, because then they know you maintain control of those 50 units affordable.
Mm-hmm. And just to return to Councilor Canellis's point, general timeline again, Michael, I'm sorry, if you would just, you get approval from the council, and what other approvals do you need before you can move forward with the establishment of the nonprofit and then the exchange? Can you give us
Not too many more. It's a great question. We're hoping to, between January and March of 2021, do the due diligence and finish the supplemental documentation for the Section 18 application in conjunction with Cambridge, which they've been just unbelievably helpful at this process. We've done the environmental review, which is required. We've done the beginning of the ownership structure. We need to finalize the nonprofit and get us the tax exemption that is required. The letter of support from the local government would be when the town council would vote depending on the outcome of today. The rent reasonableness comparability study, they need to do, an independent third party needs to study to make sure that these rents that we currently have at Watertown Housing Authority are the fair market, and that those are where the vouchers should come in. And we don't anticipate any snags there because of how competitive this area is. We're considered in the Boston, Quincy, Cambridge consortium, so certainly Watertown should not see an issue there. And then the application for the removal from the public housing program. That's sort of one of the final steps, because we are out of the public housing game at the end of this. We're fully converting to Section 8, a different funding stream. So that would be it. We would hope to get a draft application ready. We would have a 30-day public review period, probably at the end of February to the end of March, where the public would have to review that. Approval by the board would be the last part, and we hope to do that in April, and then apply to HUD. Disposition approval, and then they apply for the voucher. There's two different applications. One goes to the Special Application Center, which is HUD, and they review the general application. And once they approve that, from my understanding, then there's another application that goes to DC for the vouchers. But the formality of approving that is sort of, you need the big application to get approved. Section 18 is approved by the Special Applications Committee of HUD. And once that happens, you're kind of getting the ball rolling to actually get what we call the HAP agreements, the actual agreement and contract that's going to say you're going to receive housing assistance payments on X date. And at that point, you will be almost like the flip of a light switch. Hypothetically, if it was November 1st was the effective date of the contract, October 31st, your public housing, November 1st, you switch, you hit the light switch, and now you're Section 8. So it really is sort of something where the residents wouldn't know, but the agreements, the behind the scenes change is happening, as I think the best way to put it.
So when you say you're out of public housing, you mean you're out of federal public housing?
Yes, we still have quite a large state, yes.
Thank you. I think it's very attractive, particularly the potential for the new nonprofit to use its ownership of land. Well, the housing authority has the land, coming into some partnership with the nonprofit for the potential of, and bringing in maybe an experienced CDC to create new housing sounds like a wonderful idea. So congratulations.
Great, thank you. There are two hands raised before I go up to the participants. Any follow-up, Councilor Feltner and Councilor Palumbo, are you set for now? Okay, and Councilor Feltner, if you could just keep an eye on any incoming emails. I don't see anything in the chat group, so I'll open it up to raised hands. Councilor Anthony Donato.
Thank you, Councilor Canellis. Michael, I was wondering if you could just real quickly speak to one of the reasons I think this is so exciting, in that maybe is the fact that you're going to be able to generate so much more income to be used to further the goals of Watertown Housing. But I'm not sure that most people in town realize you get no funding from the town of Watertown. Is that correct?
It's a harsh way of putting it. I would say that we get assistance when it comes to the dumpsters. We get assistance with the sand when it comes to snow removal. We get we get the police and fire at 55 Waverly every day. But no, you're correct. We don't actually get dollar amounts from the town.
So I mean, I think that that's something that might be surprising to people in town. So I think this is a really just going to be a great avenue for the housing authority. If I could ask two follow-up questions. One, if the housing authority is a separate entity, completely separate entity from the town, and if you receive no funding from the town, and I apologize if this was touched on at the beginning of the meeting, why do you need town council approval to proceed down this route?
I think, I would just open and say, we would always go the town council route. I think it's the right thing to do, to go through and let the public know that this is a transaction that's happening on federal public land in their community, first of all. But I would also say the requirements are also HUD. HUD does require a local government consultation and sign off from either, whether it's a town setup or however you're set up in this area, we would need the approval. And so we approached President Sedaris, and we were sent to the subcommittee, and then the town council will vote to approve, but it is a requirement for the Section 18 application.
Thank you. And then just the last question. You had mentioned, if this nonprofit were to have excess funds, those might be used to develop new units. Could those funds also be used to purchase existing housing stock, like a 2-family, and convert that to, affordable housing with, either deed restriction or some sort of restriction that would ensure affordability for the forever?
I'm not sure about the affordability forever. I would say that we would certainly be able to purchase real estate through the nonprofit and to administer some sort of affordable housing program in that. Whether we would be able to keep it in perpetuity is a little difficult to say, because it's not necessarily like you're buying it and now it's public housing. It would be, there's so many variables there. But I would add that, yes, I know that a lot of, Cambridge Housing Authority, for example, years ago, when I went around and toured Cambridge with the executive director there, we were talking about all this and sort of the redevelopment that's needed, because there's just such a lack of funding for housing in this area. Is that he was saying you would walk by this great piece of property right by Cambridge Housing Authority land, and he would say, I wish I could just point at that and say, I wish I could buy that, and we could have, a bunch of housing and special needs or accessibility. But now they've positioned themselves, because they've been doing this for over 10 years, where they have the funding stream to do that. They have enough money in this expensive, wild real estate market of ours, where they could go purchase real estate, and it's a sound investment, because they're going to be able to do affordable housing, and they know that that is also going to have a huge value in 10, 15, 20 years. For instance, the community garden there at 103 Nichols was bought in early 1980s for $29,000. You think about the potential and value of that land now. And so, yes, that would be a possibility. But as somebody who is looking at homes now with his a new wife, I would say it's pretty unrealistic to think we'll have those sums of money anytime soon. But hopefully in the near future, we could be able to do something like that.
But as you mentioned earlier, there is the potential for other funding sources, including potential CPA projects. So, I'm just excited, one, that the housing authority is going to, there's going to be increased revenue for you to carry out your goals, but also that there is going to be this potential option to, bring some more, affordable housing into the town's existing stock. So I fully support this, and I want to thank you and your team for all of your hard work.
And if I could just add, Councilor Don, I really do appreciate that. And something to think about as we're taking on, like you said, the other funding streams. DHCD, the Department of Housing and Community Development, the state subsidy that oversees all state public housing, they really want to do new housing as well, but they always want to see a town or city kind of approach and see if they can give funds as well, that partnering, where you have almost 3 funding streams. You would have CPA, the state, whether through DMH or DHCD, and then perhaps, like you said, whatever funding the nonprofit could provide. So it's very exciting, because I don't think we've had this potential in a long time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Donato. And next we have Councilor Caroline Bays with her hand up. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Councilor Canellis. My question was, you talked about the fact that the people who are currently in there are, nothing is going to change for them other than some paperwork, it sounds like. But what about future tenants? What changes in terms of accepting and getting future tenants? Is there a different mechanism through which people are accepted? Like, how does that work?
A great question. Yes, it would not be the federal public housing waitlist. You are right to ask that the people that are prospective and would like to be coming in are not going to be coming through the same stream, but they're coming through the Section 8 centralized waitlist. That wait list currently, we are housing people that were applied in 2009. Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, by all means, please. But I believe the people that we're housing now are roughly 2009. They've been waiting 11 years to get a Section 8 voucher and to be housed in it. So just to imagine that if you had, one child and you're looking for Section 8 in 2009, and now that kid is 11, you have 3 other kids, you're still on a Section 8 wait list. So we're going to be addressing probably the lowest of the low as far as those who need affordable housing in the state, in a good way. So it's a good change, I would say. But yes, it is a significant change.
And do you have any advice, like if we have a constituent coming to us with housing issues, do you have any advice to us? I mean, you're here, so I might as well ask about the best way for them to obtain housing. Should we have them applying for multiple different places? Like, how does that work for them? Usually I just show them the list, I show them the website to sign up. Is there advice you have about what we should tell people to do?
My advice to everybody I know is talk to a legislator, because we need more affordable housing in the state desperately, number one. But honestly, number two is please send us those residents anytime you have a chance. We are trained to handle those calls. We take those calls many, many times each day. Unfortunately, it varies. If it's a family, chances are that unless they were displaced by a fire, a natural disaster, or a Board of Health condemnation, they will not be able to be housed immediately. That's just the nature of family housing right now. We have a good sized family portfolio in Watertown, 240 units, but we're seeing people that are waiting for emergency housing 9-10 years now for a 3-bedroom. You might as well remove the L from local housing authority and add an E, because we're emergency housing. We haven't housed a non-emergency applicant since the new centralized system went live in January 2019. And if you would just allow me, when we met recently with the Watertown Housing Partnership, I just gave them sort of year-end numbers, just so everybody could understand that public housing has hit sort of an epidemic in the last few years, but just in the last 2 years, as a result of the new centralized system, our family housing has seen an increase of 285 applicants for 2019 to 1,866 for emergency priority 4 applicants. For the non-emergency family applicants, last year we had 2,784. This year we had 11,213 non-emergency family applicants. And for elderly, our priority 4s are emergencies. We had 41 last year, 351 emergency elderly applicants this year. For non-emergencies last year, we had 104. This year, 2,749. So even our elderly applicants, it's skyrocketed. It's a result of that centralized list. You can check off all the housing authorities and at once when you apply, which is good, but then it clogs this list. And now we don't really have an accurate sense of how long the wait is. We just know it's very long. And so to your question, what do we tell people when they say that they're looking for emergency housing? Send them our way. Perhaps there's a way where we could see in their eligibility that perhaps they're high on the list, or it could be prioritized with the new wait list system. But oftentimes, especially for families, the best option is emergency shelter. So it's very unfortunate that we're sending people that way, but those are the people we're seeing coming off the wait list too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For your answer.
Councillor Feltner, are there any emails? I can't hear you.
Sorry, I'm just juggling a couple
Oh,
screens
sorry.
here. Yeah, I don't see anything in my email box.
Okay, and there's nothing in chat that I can see. Mr. Field, was there something that you'd like to add on behalf of Department of Community Development and Planning? Steve Magoon was unable to join us this evening.
Right.
Thank you for taking his place.
Sure, happy to do that. I don't have anything prepared to say. I think what I'll just add that we are staffing the housing partnership, and we independently did some research that was consistent with what the Housing Authority has found about the value of the Section 18 program, and particularly this this exception that allows Watertown to convert to the project-based and get more money than is presently the case. We haven't done any review of the conversion to the new ownership structure because there are no specifics there available right now.
Thank you so much. Michael, is there any legal counsel that's involved with this process representing whether it be the housing authority or whether it be the town?
Great question. Klein Hornig. Klein Hornig LLP, very, very reputable Boston firm. I can say now that they've upped their rates for next year, a very, very expensive firm. If I have 3 on a group call, we're talking $1,000. But yes, there's a very reputable law firm that's helping us with the nonprofit formation, mostly because of my legal background. I'm very concerned to make sure that no one can come and say that this nonprofit down the road did something and did not convey the property in the right way. You know, that actual transaction to me has to be seamless. And I have no doubt now with Cambridge in a consulting capacity and with Klein Hornig in a legal consulting capacity that we're going to do it the right way.
Thank you. And I saw James Mello physically raise his hand. Mr. Mello? Mr. Mello, if you'd like to join us. I think his screen is frozen. We'll come back to him. Michael, would some of your guests, invited guests, like to offer comment? I don't see any other hands raised.
We'll just add Emily, you know, just when we consulted with the residents, you know, what the feedback that she saw, she did a lot of the resident consultation. I was at most of the bigger meetings, and then Emily did a lot of the follow-up to make sure that we reached out to all 50, obviously remotely, in person with social distancing when the numbers weren't so high in early November. But Emily, did you notice anything or something from the residents that kind of could be generalized so that the council can understand?
Sure. So we had 2 different sets of resident meetings. We had resident consultation meetings where we discussed Section 18, and the residents went over the brochure and another fact sheet. And then earlier this month, we had a resident advisory board meeting. We actually had 4 of those, and all of these meetings are available in person, socially distant, in the community room at their building, along with online on Zoom. I think the main takeaway from the meetings was really positive. The residents were really excited about this project and had a really great grasp on it. Their main concern, I believe, and hopefully James's video unfreezes soon, was just regarding the transfer from working with Patty Richardson, who has been the manager for quite some time, to working with me, and the regulations regarding federal public housing versus Section 8. So those were the main points of concern. And we have discussed that moving forward, when it is time for that conversion, we will be having meetings to go over any changes to the paperwork, if there are any, and to really walk our residents through anything that we might see as new or difficult for them.
Great, thank you. I think Mr. Mello has joined us again. Are you able to, Jimmy?
Yes, I'm back. Sorry about that.
Great, no problem. Great.
What I was going to say is they met is Emily just went through, but met with all of us. I'm supportive of this. It makes so much sense. I mean, a longtime resident of Watertown. I've lived here at 100 Warren about almost 3 years, going on that, and it is very up to date and in good shape right now. With the limited funds that housing has had to use up here, they've done a great job. So this going forward with the extra money that can be used here and for other purposes for the housing authority, that would be a no-brainer for the town. And I urge all the councilors to support this.
Thank you very much, Jimmy. And then we have Margaret Moran, our invited guest from Cambridge. Is there something you'd like to add?
I'll just add that, Michael came to visit us a couple of years ago, and he had already started thinking through some of these scenarios in terms of really trying to reposition the Watertown Housing Authority to take advantage of, kind of a unique opportunity for a housing authority that has a federal public housing program of 50 units or less. And I thought he was spot on in terms of pursuing it and identifying it as a tool that will really strengthen the housing authority in terms of providing additional resources for Warren Street, but also overall for the housing authority's operation, and using it in a way to, address, the lack of resident services, to continue to keep the property in really excellent condition, which I've toured myself and agree it's in pristine condition. And then the opportunity it might afford to expand the housing authority's portfolio with any kind of new development or reconstruction of what it has. So, I think you've got a great team in place at Watertown Housing Authority. We've been really impressed with the thoughtfulness and the caliber of what they're doing and what they're putting together. And I think you're being really well served. And we've really have enjoyed working with Michael and Emily and the full Watertown Housing Authority team. And, we've done, as Michael said, about I think we're hitting the 96% of our portfolio will have converted either through to Section 8. And it really has afforded the Cambridge Housing Authority a tremendous amount of additional income and a tremendous amount of additional flexibility that has really benefited, what our residents are experiencing in the housing that Cambridge owns, but then in what we're able to offer in enhanced services and enhanced housing opportunities. And so we're really thrilled that Watertown's pursuing something similar.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Councilor Palumba, do you have a follow-up? I thought I saw your hand motioning.
A quick closing comment. I had the privilege of being shown around the Watertown Housing Authority properties by Michael when he first came on. It feels like years ago, but it wasn't that long ago. He had mentioned this project at some point after that, and I was a little weary of it because I didn't understand it, and I wanted just to say I think he and his team have done a wonderful job of putting together the facts and the figures in a readable fashion, and I'm so glad that he had the one-pager come out and so that we could all understand the positive benefits of it. I was just a little worried that we were losing public housing, and clearly that was dispelled very quickly by him and his team. So I just wish him the very best and his team the very best, and thank them for all the work they did in putting this together.
Thank you all. I do not see any other raised hands. I do not see anything in chat. Councilor Feltner, any emails? No. I see one attendee with a telephone number. I don't see a raised hand. So if there are no further comments, I would entertain a motion from my colleagues on the committee.
I'll make the motion that we make the motion that the committee request that the full town council support the proposal from the Watertown Housing Authority to transfer 50 units of federal housing to Section 8.
Is there a second? Can you?
Second.
Okay, and we need a roll call vote. Councilor Palumba?
Yes.
Councilor Feltner?
Yes. Councilor Canellis?
Yes.
Can I make a motion to adjourn?
Yes, you may. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please. Councilor Palumba?
Yes.
Councilor Feltner?
Yes. Councilor Canellis?
Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us this evening, and happy holidays to all, and happy and healthy new year. Healthy is the most important aspect of it.